Welcome to my Masters of Education e-portfolio. This site has been designed to illustrate the growth that I have made as both a student and as an educator, and it makes up a great deal of the final chapter of my experience in UBC's MET program. The purpose of my e-portfolio is multifaceted. It serves to satisfy the requirements of the Masters of Educational Technology program as established by the University of British Columbia and the Teacher Qualification Service. This e-portfolio also serves as both a record and a keepsake, documenting the pages of my incredible learning journey. I consider this e-portfolio to be like the rough draft of a prized manuscript. I am hopeful that it will serve as a place in the future in which I can further my own learning by sharing my e-portfolio with colleagues and other educators, and by continuing to add to it as my learning deepens and my practice continues to evolve through my own future professional learning endeavors. I am a very reflective person, and the idea for my site metaphor presented itself to me before I even knew that I needed one. In order to document my learning journey, I actually started an e-portfolio at the onset of the MET program 2.5 years ago. I added to this first site throughout my MET experience, and in looking for a way to frame my reflections and aid in the navigation of my site, I decided to treat the site like the chapters of a book. By the time I was well into ETEC 590, I realized that what I had created was simply just a record of my learning, and in actuality, it was not really an e-portfolio at all. It contained every assignment that I completed in the entire program, every major forum discussion post that I had written, in addition to my reflective commentary throughout. What was included within that first site had not been mindfully selected, which is an essential element in a successful e-portfolio. I am grateful to have this record of my learning, as it was a great help when I was searching for the learning gems and artifacts that I felt were the right ones to grace the pages of my ETEC 590 e-portfolio. When I began my official e-portfolio, I really did consider a number of other metaphor possibilities, but my heart kept bringing me back to books. As both an avid reader and an aspiring writer, this metaphor just seems to fit who I am, and also what my site has become. As Robert Frost once said, "A good book has no ending," and I do not see the completion of my MET journey as an ending, but instead, I see it as a fresh page, waiting for me to begin writing my next story upon it. Before you lie the chapters and individual pages of my MET experience. In Chapter 1, you will find the 4 core courses of the program: ETEC 500, 511, 512, and 510. From the time of my acceptance into the program, my intention was to take these 4 courses first. Like an author gathering background information for a new novel, I too wanted to establish a solid bank of knowledge upon which I could then build the next chapter of my journey. In Chapter 2, you will find the first 4 electives that I selected in my second year of the program: ETEC 540, 565A, 532, and 533. In preparation for Year 2, I carefully reviewed my course options and attempted to narrow in on my specific areas of interest so that in my future exploits, I would have some experiential knowledge with which I could successfully write a third and final chapter. In the third chapter, you will find my final 2 courses, ETEC 531 and, of course, ETEC 590. At this point, much of my manuscript was written. Through the knowledge gained in ETEC 590, I began to revisit and revise the earliest pages of my manuscript. Rereading these pages at the end of my journey, I was now looking upon what I had written in the past with an entirely new lens. Rather than removing elements that I viewed as flawed or possibly less worthy of being a showpiece of my own learning, I exposed some of these areas of weakness by including them as learning artifacts in an attempt to draw empathy and understanding from my readers, many of whom may have walked the same steps that I did on their own similar journey. Through a selective process, I made a few design decisions that you see before you here. Upon each of the main pages of my e-portfolio, from the prologue through chapters 1, 2, and 3, and in the epilogue that follows, I have included a narrative which tells the tale of my journey. In addition to the narrative, each of the main chapter pages contains a landing page from which you can journey back to the previous page, forward to the next major page, or go deeper into the site via the course links themselves. To aid in the ease of navigation, each course page has been set up in a similar fashion. At the top of each course page, you will see a piece of text connecting my experience in the course to my overlying metaphor. You will also see a variety of information on the various course pages. I wanted to include some of my key learning points on these course pages. Some of this information pertains to noteworthy activities, reflections, and connections made to the individuals who helped me transform my own thinking along the way. These learning moments make up the bulk of my course pages. At the bottom of each page, you will see my artifacts of learning, which are marked throughout by an orange button. In order to force myself to be very selective and really narrow in on the key events of my MET experience, I have included just 3 artifacts of learning for each of the MET courses, with the exception of ETEC 590. These orange buttons will take you to the artifact page, upon which you will see a personal reflection and the artifact itself. Where possible, I have embedded my artifacts within the site. The remainder of the site navigation has been set up in a repetitive fashion. All of the artifact pages contain additional navigational buttons at the bottom of the screen to take you to previous pages, the current course page, or the upcoming artifact or course. Much of the site is accessible through internal navigation only, in an effort to keep the top toolbar clean and concise, as there are almost 60 individual pages that make up this e-portfolio. You will notice 2 other colored buttons as you travel through the pages of the site. All of the courses in Chapter 2 have an additional green button. While I was building that trial site mentioned earlier in the tour, I challenged myself in Year 2 to blog the experience. I did not want this valuable learning to sit unseen in my unpublished trial website, so I have included access to my blogs here for those people who may wish to view them. In ETEC 565A, you will also see a number of blue buttons. I ended up discontinuing the blogging of this course as the ETEC 565A e-portfolio assignment was so encompassing, it essentially became my blog. Any artifact that will be viewed within the ETEC 565A e-portfolio will be marked by a blue button. In an attempt to increase the value of my e-portfolio as a learning resource for others, I created a Classroom Connections page, which you will find under the Epilogue tab. This page contains 4 of the online tools or big ideas that have helped me make significant changes in my teaching practices, with the exception of Fresh Grade, which is actually what I am hoping will be the first chapter of my next book. Within the epilogue, you will also see an About the Author tab, as well as a References area. I have tried to reflect upon each learning artifact and my key learning points throughout the e-portfolio. I have acknowledged the many influential people whose theories and contributions in the field helped me clarify and in some cases change my thinking. More than any theory, though, I was most influenced by constructivism. When I began my teaching career, I was taught to teach children in a very traditional way. I learned many valuable things from my sponsor teachers, but their main expectation when evaluating my teaching was that I maintained control in the classroom so that all of the students could sit quietly at their desks and learn what I told them to learn. For much of my career, that is what I attempted to do in my classroom. However, this approach did not work for everyone, and as my career went on, it began to work for less and less of my students. Learning more about the constructivist learning theory opened my eyes to a whole new kind of teaching and learning. Knowing the research behind this theory and having learned via this theory in the MET courses has resulted in a major change in my thinking. Making the realization that a constructivist approach meshes well with best practice strategies was sort of like giving myself permission to step aside as the conveyor of knowledge at the front of the classroom. Instead, I began to take on the role of facilitator more often, and I provided my students with opportunities to have both a voice and a choice in their own learning. I wish that I would have had the courage to make this change much earlier on in my career. I have always loved my job, and I strive to engage my students in their own learning in meaningful ways. Because of the MET program, I now have a better understanding of learning theories and the technological skills under my belt to aid me in providing students with exciting and rich learning tasks that put them squarely at the center of their own education. I know that my journey as a lifelong learner will not end here. This book may now be written, but my journey is far from being over. I have done my research, I have taken my notes, and I have framed my next story, and I can't wait to get started on writing it.